Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Central Washington University is the institution of higher education here in little old Ellensburg, Washington. Thank you for joining us today. The local time is 11:46 a.m. Pacific Time. And today's date, Thursday, February 6th of 2025. Looks like we're loud and clear. Thank you for that report. I hope everything is going well for you, wherever you are. It's winter here, for sure. It is winter. Got a dusting of snow overnight. It seems like bitter cold is on the way, and it's below zero right now, 28 degrees Fahrenheit. So we have wintry conditions, and even though the days are getting a little bit longer each day, as is the case in February, it feels more like winter here in February than it did in January, at least in the state of Washington. Maybe the same for you as well. Where are you viewing from today? And yes, if you're watching this replay, I think you know by now that we will begin the program in about 12 minutes from now, maybe even a couple minutes beyond that. Rainy Martinez, California, reports Jim. Carbon, Germany, hello Jutta SK. Oscar's in San Diego. Kelly is in St. Louis, Missouri. Webb Lake, Wisconsin. Bend, Oregon. Olympia, Washington. Southern Oregon, that's Trent. Regine is in Cardimanche, France. That's French. Jerome is in Jarrett, Virginia. Let's just make sure we have a relatively smooth. Still a little bit of herky-jerky. I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to obsess, but yeah, there's a old school truck going by. North Ogden, Utah. Nanaimo, British Columbia. Hello. And that person is in Kona, Hawaii at the moment. Don is in Fairbanks, Alaska. He reports it's plus 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Big game tonight for the women's basketball team, 5:15 local time. The dreaded Western Washington Vikings are in town. Hannah Shamloo, Jordan, and I will be in our accustomed spot in the end zone, right underneath the bench, right underneath the basket next to the bench. Come on, let's go. Alan is in Portland, Oregon. Teresa is in Seattle, Washington. Heard of it? Spokane, Washington. That's Frank. Sarasota, Florida. Anna Martin, we are all jealous of you. Cheryl, the reference librarian, is in snowy Spokane, Washington. So many of you joining live here, almost 350 at the moment, and that number will climb. Always a thrill to have so many live viewers. This is a recording. I always say that. Michael Graham. Good evening, Nick and everyone. We have no power here. Little phone battery left. It's pitch black. Let's see how it goes. But you are 5x5 from Trim, Ireland. Okay, Michael and family, you hang in there now. Is that weather related that you are without power? I hope that your power is restored soon and that you're nice and warm somehow in your home tucked into the Irish countryside. Golden, Colorado. Pulteney, Vermont. Hello, Robert. I don't think I've seen you before. -7 in Penticton, BC. Elma, Washington. Charleston, South Carolina. Lawrence. Do you know Kate Fagan? She's an old friend of mine that used to live in Ellensburg, Washington. Best-selling author. New York Times author. Former ESPN personality. Kate Fagan? She lives in your town. Charleston, South Carolina. I love Kate Fagan, and I've been enjoying her brand new book, The 3 Lives of Can't remember. Halfway through. Outer Springs, Georgia. Missoula, Montana. That's Stephen. Kirk's in Göteborg, Sweden. Northern Virginia. And so on. I have a gift that I want to thank publicly. Let's go to the document camera. From Thomas in Helena, Montana. Winter has set in, so I have turned my firewood pile into extraction tools for quartz crystals. I made a bunch for friends and thought I better get one to you. Yes, they do get destroyed the first time out. However, they are very good luck. I know you don't collect minerals, so please give away any of these that you don't want and or have room for. I just had to put a few boulder batholith minerals in to give to students that collect minerals. I make the sticks bright so that I don't lose them in the pile of dirt behind me. Sincerely, Thomas from Helena, Montana. Thomas, thank you. Thank you for your gift. Let me show you some of the mineral samples. And you're right, I don't hang on to them. I don't collect them. So we do have a few geology majors who love crystals, and I'm going to give some of your samples to each of those very deserving, hardworking students. Okay, is that our deal, Thomas? All right, everybody, here's what Thomas put in his box. So he's got a amethyst from Powell County, Montana. Beautiful quartz crystal there. Thank you. It's got quartz from Lost World, Beaverhead County, Montana. Thomas, the time it took for you to mount these and keep track of these and label these for us, thank you. Vesuvinite from the hills, Lewis and Clark County, Montana. Yeah, there's a group of geology majors taking mineralogy right now. Maybe I'll give these to Chris Mattinson, who's teaching the class, and maybe Chris will give these away as little brownie points for people. I don't know. And then the extraction tools for quartz crystal hunting. So special operation. Mountain quartz, and these look to be hand painted. Thomas, did you hand paint these? you paint them bright so that you don't lose them in your wood pile. Look at this. There's a bunch more. Thank you, Thomas, from Helena, Montana. Okay, everybody, I've got about 5 minutes before we start. I need to take a walk outside and get my head right. Today is a scripted show, meaning that there's a lot of slides that I will just be following, so I don't have to keep quite as much in my head. But I still need to give myself a pep talk, and that's why I take my little walk, is to get myself right, to get my head right. And I think I've been doing this since the backyard days. And we're still doing it. Jay says, those are pretty sick digging tools. Artistic, says Carla. Fancy digging sticks, says Lindsay Malone. Excellent. Yeah. This is a generous community. What can I say? Okay, thank you for joining us. We will start in 5 minutes. Hot mic. Okay, you have a story. You have a story to start, and that's going to set the tone for what you want to do early on. Get to the story and don't make it a 20-minute story, okay? Keep it brisk. You have some papers. But you want to get to the slides. There's a lot of slides. You want to keep it going with the slides. So tell your story. Reset the series, right? Is that what you're doing? Pay attention to me now. Is that what you're doing? It's a series reset using your story. Okay, think about how you're going to start your story and make it quick. Otherwise, follow the slides. Thank you. Here you go. Well, a pleasant good afternoon to you all, and welcome to today's episode entitled The Roaring Twenties. This is episode T. There's not that many letters left, and this is the second of 3 read episodes. So, that I need to be clear about that title, I guess, to those that are new to us. But most of you have been with the series from the first letter, from A, back in early November. And you've been watching the series in order, whether it's been live or in replay. And I continue to hear from folks, get emails from folks saying, I'm almost there, we're almost caught up. In other words, we don't want to jump in live until we make sure that we get caught up and we are live in the proper order. And I appreciate it. Each of these letters are 2 hours long. It's a serious commitment. It's not 20-minute episodes where you can binge watch a couple of nights and be all caught up. I understand. And for many of you, you got off the rails with us because of my break. You remember back mid-November to mid-December, I wasn't doing these unexpectedly. And then I resumed in mid-December, and I just blew right through the Christmas holiday time and did 2 episodes a week to kind of get caught up myself on the schedule so that we could finish this series by the end of February. So because of those interruptions, many people are slowly but surely getting caught up. So maybe some of you are live for the first time after getting caught up for the last month or so. And I tell you all that because I'm in a bit of a reflective mood because we're going to look ahead. I have a plan for the rest of the alphabet. And I didn't have that plan until a few days ago. So let me tell you a quick story, and then we'll look at the website, and then we'll get into the Fife's Peak Formation. We'll resume our parade of Plutons, these Plutons in the Roaring Twenties. We'll go to the Tatoosh today. We'll go to the Snoqualmie Batholith today. We'll go to the Cloudy Pass Batholith. We'll visit the Chilliwack briefly. We'll look a fair amount at the lavas of the Fife's Peak Formation, both within Mount Rainier National Park and without. And we will set up next episode, which is called Hammond Land. Paul Hammond. Hammond Land. Not Disneyland, Hammond Land. That's Saturday. But let me tell you a quick story since I'm in this series resetting frame right now. You remember Jordan Carey, the guy that's half my age. He's in his early 30s, and he's teaching right down the hall regularly, and he is pulling them in. He is a magnetic guy. This department, this geology department at Central Washington University is healthy right now, growing right now with the number of majors that we have, primarily because of the work of this kid, Jordan Carey. He's doing what I was doing decades ago, but I'm in my early 60s, and so the torch has been passed to this young man who is developing a teaching style of his own, but it's working. And his charisma and his magnetism is bringing these students in. I mentioned Jordan. I talked about him in the last episode. You remember he's doing a little bit of work with Washington Geological Survey in addition to the work that he's doing here. So that connection between WGS and CWU continues to strengthen. I mentioned Jordan because late last week he dropped in here. I saw my door was open and he said, hey, I just want to tell you, man, Hannah and I are almost caught up. In other words, they took a break for the holidays. They visited relatives back in the Midwest. They got behind. And so they have not been watching. Hannah Shamlow and Jordan Carey have not been watching live because they've been behind. And they're almost caught up. And Jordan's messages were nice. We love the series. We love the new format. I mean, Jordan and Hannah are still relatively new to Washington, so they're all excited about all these places that they did not know about, or they're making a list of places they want to go visit. And Hannah's a Cascades volcano expert, and so she's learning all sorts of detail that she didn't know before, that she will be following through on her work, and she's been taking her notes. So Jordan reported on all that, and it was very nice to hear. But before Jordan left my office on Friday afternoon, he said, I got to add one more thing. I'm getting a little stressed out. And I said, you're getting a little stressed out by the alphabet? And he's like, yeah. When we finish each episode, each replay, I say to Hannah, he's running out of letters. How's he going to finish this? He still has 30 million years worth of Cascade stuff, and he's only got he's going to be done at the end of February. How is he going to do this? And I said, it's okay, Jordan. I'll figure it out. And he said, no, seriously, how are you going to do it? What's your plan? And I said, I don't know. This is last Friday. I don't know. And I could tell that he wasn't going to leave my office until I told him my plan. I said, I'll tell you what, Jordan. This weekend, which is last weekend, since I saw you last on Saturday morning, this weekend I'm going to sit down and I'm going to plot out the rest of the alphabet. And I'm going to put a bunch of papers on the website. I'm just going to put them all on there. I can't keep them all in my head. And so I was starting to do that, starting to post some of the papers, starting to use my little number 2 pencil and Bijou the cat and just try to figure out how I was going to do the rest of the alphabet together. And I did a conversation with Gary Paul on Sunday morning, recorded it, put it at the video library. If you happen to see it, Gary and I were talking about ideas for Nick on the Rocks. And right at the end, impulsively, I asked Gary Paul during our recorded Zoom chat, Gary, any comments on the alphabet that we've been doing and anything surprise you or whatever? And here's what Gary said. Here's what Gary Paul said on Sunday morning. Thank you for that. Final thoughts, comments, or reflections on the alphabet and what you're hoping that we will do before we quit at the end of the month.
Wow. Well, probably for me, one of the big ahas that has come out of this was how long a period of time were the Cascades basically near or at sea level.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Thank you.
All that green stuff that you drive by over by Lake Ketchelis, the Natchez. Also now that's up, at almost 8,000 feet in the Alpine Lakes and scattered around all over. Those are big for me, I think, to realize the extent of those in the Cascades.
So that was Gary Paul Sunday morning. And I thought about that the rest of Sunday. Here's a guy who has spent his entire professional life and even personal life, from a kid age all the way up to his age now, he's in his late 60s, in the Cascades. He knows every peak by heart. He knows every geological unit by heart. And he's been impressed at how low the elevation has been so far in this alphabet. And I thought, I think I'm impressed by that too. The uplift thing we've been talking about. And so before Sunday was done, I emailed Sky Cooley because I know he'd been doing some work with uplift in the Cascades. And I did a Zoom chat with Sky. And yesterday I did a Zoom chat with Lydia Steisch. And I am hot on a brand new idea, and I like the question. I like the idea so much that 2 of our letters next weekend are going to be devoted to one question. Did the famous flood basalts of eastern Washington cross the Cascades? I'm going to call it right now. I think that's one of the 3 downtown lectures. Before I even put the stuff together, I'm confident there's enough there. I've gotten enough emails. I've gotten enough leads. I've gotten enough tips. I've got enough comments in the emails below, the videos below by both Sky Cooley and Lydia Steisch. There's a lot there. And you're like, I don't even understand the question. What's that got to do with the Cascades? It's got everything to do with the Cascades because, as I will say, next weekend, not Saturday, but I'm setting up a week from now, as I'll say then, we're still going to be low in paleo elevation, paleotopography for much of the red time. And when those brown lavas, those flood basalts, are released 16 million years ago, we still don't have a big mountain range. So why wouldn't we have the Columbia River basalt lavas, the Yakima basalts, crossing what is now a huge Cascade mountain range? Because it wasn't a huge Cascade mountain range back then. And it's not my idea. It goes back to J. Hoover Mackin. It goes back to a bunch of people. And just that idea is out of vogue. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I'm scrambling the remaining letters. Jordan, I'm scrambling the remaining letters to build around that question. And that means I'm tweaking the colors as well. So I hereby declare that this is the latest version. And if you look carefully, there are some tweaks. I got rid of dark green. I don't think dark green, it turns out, is that big a deal. What did we do? We just started the Chilliwack 35 million years ago, and we had the index in the Squire Creek. I don't know if that's such a big story. So I got rid of dark green. So now everything's just green, 35 to 26. We'll see if you like it or not. Maybe you hate this. I don't know. Maybe I'll hate it, but I like it at the moment. I put Fife's Peak at as the leadoff hitter here because the Ohanapikosh are all those volcanic and volcaniclastic and lava flow creations, deposits between 35 and 26. I'm working on the story today and Saturday that the Fife's Peak Formation is a continuation of that. Still relatively low. Maybe not quite as low paleo elevation-wise as the Ohanapikosh, but still pretty frickin' low. So I'm going to go 26 to 16 just for the Fife's Peak. That's one of the main messages from today. This is the same chalkboard, isn't it? Since the last episode, I didn't even erase it. I erased the guesses for the ages of the Plutons because I'm going to get off of that. I want to stay fluid here. Just from the beginning of the alphabet, I promised that if something was going to kind of bubble up in front of our eyes, no pun intended, that was interesting, I wasn't going to ignore it. I was going to lean into it. And this is another one of those moments in the alphabet where I have found this question and I'm steering towards the question. I'm not steering away from it. I'm not afraid of it. I'm leaning into it. I'm steering towards it. So I'm getting off of what are the detailed ages for the Snoqualmie Batholith versus the Cloudy Pass. I don't care now. They're in the 20s. That's good enough for us, I think. But what I am doing is adding the Fife's Peak Formation, which until recently I didn't quite realize was a younger version of the Ohanapikosh in many ways. We'll see some differences today, but in many ways it's just a continuation. So Fife's Peak The Fife's Peak Formation today is the graveyard of volcanic products that were produced by different kinds of volcanoes, shield volcanoes, stratovolcanoes, rhyolitic supervolcano explosions. All of those results of all that volcanic activity, I got to look now, between 26 and 16 million years ago, that's Fife's Peak. And then, yes, the Plutons are part of it, just like the Chilliwack was part of the Ohanapikosh. And like, where's the Chilliwack? Didn't you say the Chilliwack is rainbow? Yeah, I did. But like, I don't know. I'm trying to keep this as elegant as possible. I'm excited. 16 million years ago, we start the Yakima basalts, otherwise known as the Columbia River basalts. But the two letters next weekend, Thursday and Saturday, are going to be not only learning the details of the Yakima basalts, but leaning into the question of, are the Cascade Mountains still low enough to have the Yakima basalts crossing substantial portions of the South Cascades of Washington? I think it's going to be fun, and I'm going to have 5 days between Saturday and the following Thursday to put a bunch of stuff together. And I'm going to be starting from scratch with a bunch of that, but I'm excited, and that's a question that's going to be fun to put those two lectures together. I tweaked the color here because much of the Ellensburg sediments, which are in between some of the Yakima basalt layers, are coming from the Fife's Peak country. And so I thought I'd change it to pink since we're having reddish stuff kind of repackaged and sent away from the Fife's Peak area. So we'll see if you like the pink. I don't know if I do, but we'll try it now. And then we're highlighting the Cascade Uplift. And the video library, those conversations with the geologists, this number will continue to change, but I'm starting to think that 7 million years ago might be the beginning, a nice safe number for the beginning of our uplift of the Cascades. And then, of course, we're going to finish the alphabet with the Goat Rocks. So, can I go to my website and show you all of the papers that have been put on, as well as the video library? Sure I can. I've done it before. I just hit a button, man. That's all I need to do. So here we go. The video library has been busy. It's been hopping in the last few days. I don't know if you've been. There's the 30-minute conversation with Gary on Sunday morning. Here's the 30-minute conversation with Montana geologist Sky Cooley. Here's yesterday morning's conversation with Lydia Steisch. And I also, yesterday morning, went upstairs to the 3rd floor and filmed a video with Hannah and her graduate student, Haley Finch. We won't use this till the end of the month, but these two guys I will use heavily, and I'll probably have a couple of other Zoom conversations with folks in the next few days. Fun times here at the Cascade A to Z headquarters. But I don't mean to overwhelm you. So we hardly had any new papers last time, if you recall. Today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, a dozen full papers, some of which I'll use a bunch, some of you I'll just kind of use as historic references, including a very good-looking geologic map by Washington Geological Survey emeritus geologist Eric Schuster. And so this is available for you to enlarge and have fun with. I know some of you are very proficient with GIS, and I am not, but even I can use something like this and zoom way in and visit some places. I mean, the colors aren't working for us, but they're working for most people. And then, I just said, screw it. I'm not going to keep these in a separate folder. I'm just going to post for future episodes as well. So Saturday, episode U is Paul Hammond galore. And then I will be continuing to add to some of these Cascade Uplift and Yakima basalt stories as we go on. So this is not the extent of it, but it's what I have going now. Okay, so this is a long buildup. It's 12:18 for goodness, but it's almost like being a college basketball fan and you watch on CBS and they're coming back from a TV timeout with 4 minutes left and we reset the game. Here's how many timeouts Georgetown has, and their big men are in foul trouble and the possession arrow is going this way. It's kind of like that right now. We're resetting the series based on this redirection towards what I think is a very interesting question. And we will see together if it's a dead end or if we find all sorts of great stuff in the next week and a half. Okay. Well, we know by now that the color scheme remains, but we're tweaking it as we go. And yes, after today, there's 6 letters left. There's a reason Jordan Carey's been stressed out. We only have 6 letters left, and I'm telling you that these 2 letters will be dealing with the uplift of the Cascades and the Yakima basalt. So that means we'll just be goat rocks late, and I'll be giving up on a couple of things I was thinking I might be doing. It's okay. I'm trying to steer towards what's interesting. We do have a Friday talk tomorrow at noon, February 7th. Former CWU student Sean Scott now works down at the Tri-Cities Nuclear Forensics at the Pacific Northwest National Lab. We remember this from a couple letters ago. We continue to go back to the Plutons. They are invading what? They're invading the Fife's Peak Formation, which our new scheme 26 to 16 million years ago, a younger batch of volcanic layers, I'll just call them layers, sitting on top of Ohanapekosh. And if you're an old school geologist and you know the Stevens Ridge Formation, most everybody else now is dumping the Stevens Ridge Formation into the red here. So it's not broken out as a separate unit. We will eventually get to the Yakima basalts and younger. So I thought we would do a lot more letters in red. Turns out we're not. The Spirit Lake Pluton project is just starting. There's not a lot to report on. I've done what I want to do with the Spirit Lake Pluton. We did way more letters than I planned in blue. And now I'm adjusting again to say there's 2, maybe even 3 letters in this brown area, Yakima basalt. Last couple of times we've had the green Ohanapekosh at sea level, and then we've evaded from below with the big red Plutons into this coastal scene. Slightly above sea level, slightly below sea level, rivers coming in from the east, but it's these Plutons. It's the Plutons that we will continue to visit. So I'm going to go south to north yet again, but I'll go quickly because we're done with the Spirit Lake scene for sure. Isla is on record with us. We know Isla Pamukchu now so we've got other things we want to work on. Okay, I'm finally ready to really get going with the slideshow, but I'm happy with taking the time to lay out the rest of the series with you. I hope that you feel the excitement in having a roadmap for the rest of the month, and Jordan can be a little bit less stressed out. Green Ohanapikosh, much of this will be Paul Hammond land on Saturday. Much of the detail will be Saturday. But I loosely want to talk about other plutons and the Fives Peak Formation on Saturday before we get up here, younger than 16, with the Yakima basalts. If we go way down south to the Columbia River Gorge, where the Columbia River is flowing right through the heart of this major mountain range, there's some familiar friends with some unfamiliar names. The Ohanapikosh is a familiar name, and that's green. And that's the oldest bedrock unit exposed in the gore, in the kind of heart of the Columbia River Gorge. So Portland is to the west, downstream. The Dalles is over here upstream. And here's the Yakima basalts, which we'll be talking about next weekend. But the Eagle Creek Formation is red. It's an equivalent of the Fives Peak Formation. So it's satisfying to be kind of skipping around the Pacific Northwest, running into all these formation names, but the color scheme is paying off. And even something like the Eagle Creek, which has a bunch of volcanic mud flows and precious plant fossils, we're lumping them into red and feeling good about it. At least I am. And then here's our purple, very young stories in the High Cascades. Right. We're getting used to this revised version. I'm not saying this is the last time I'll make a change or two, but I'm liking all these storylines happening simultaneously for a full 10 million years. And you're hearing one of my major messages from today. We are still low. The Cascades are still very, very low during all of red time. That's a shock to me. So Silver Star Pluton, thanks to Tom in Maple Valley for this map of this Pluton south of Mount St. Helens. We're not going to deal with it. It doesn't make the cut. There may be some cool stuff involving this red Pluton. Some things need to be junked. We've only got a few shows left. Are we junking this one? Hell no. This is the project that is a major part of the next few years of my professional life, making videos in and around the Spirit Lake Pluton with Michael Eddy from Purdue and Isla Pamukchu from Stanford University. So plenty more coming on that, but this was the featured Pluton south of Randall, Morton, and Mossy Rock, south of US 12, south of Rife Lake last time. One quick note, though, I've gotten a lot of emails about a new piece of press in the last 10 years saying that the Spirit Lake Pluton, here, wrong color for us, appears to have shunted a bunch of modern magmas to the sides. Like the Mount St. Helens volcano is located where it is, and the Mount Adams volcano is located where it is, with an east arm and a west arm of some red-hot magmas today because of this big, dense Spirit Lake Pluton. I guess that's a thing. I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting. And here's the Tatoosh Pluton in Mount Rainier where we're going. I don't know what this one is. SMP. That's a whiff. I don't know. But another block diagram showing the same thing, Spirit Lake Pluton. And what's all this green stuff around the Spirit Lake Pluton, which these magmas that come to the surface in 1980 with Mount St. Helens, and these magmas underneath Mount Adams as well. What's the green? It's Grello. Here we go. This is going back to Megan Anderson in the geophysics show back in the early part of the alphabet. Right when we resumed the series after the break in November and early December, Megan's like, geophysically, it looks like we have a bunch of the Arcosic melange, part of the Western Melange Belt, getting down, and these magmas are coming up through that melange basement. Kind of fun. Plenty on Paul Hammond next time, but I remind you that his work is featured today as well. Yes, we know about the red. This thing, which you have, I mean, there's an onslaught of paper. You've got too many papers for you to work through in the next few days if you haven't been there. Look at this monster. Paul Hammond with a paper more than 200 pages long. And this conference, which I'm not even sure exists anymore, the International Geological Congress, the 28th version in 1989, Don Swanson put a field guide together for July of 1989, and this Paul Hammond, more than 200-page long thing with 168 stops on a field trip that lasted 15 days. Good Lord. Well, they did the whole Cascades. They just didn't do the South Cascades, and Paul Hammond was in charge of the whole thing, apparently. I'm going to pull a few things from this very large and long international conference because he's talking to an international audience, and I think it's good for us to hear his text, at least a little bit of it, as he's talking to a worldwide audience, not just a bunch of experts who know the Cascades well. So, yeah, July of 1989, what a time to be a Cascades geologist. You've got Hammond and Swanson leading two different trips during that month. I'm just pulling a few figures from that monster manifesto by Paul Hammond. Using our colors, I want to just show, and this is backwards, right? The green is not at the bottom and the purple's not at the top. It's backwards, just the way he's written it out here. He's talking about eruptive rate, cubic kilometers by kilometer per million years. Volume in cubic kilometers per kilometer length per million years. I think Paul Hammond in 1989 is saying we're cranking out a lot of magma in Ohanapakash time and even more in Fife's Peak time. And then the thing shuts down to a trickle in the Cascades. It's an interesting perspective. So not only are we low topographically, which I keep hammering, but we're really producing magmas. Like the magma factory is going great guns back in the green and the red time. And I guess that explains why those thick packages of Ohanapakash and Fife's Peak are so thick. But I find it interesting that he's quantifying the volume of the magmas since the time of the Yakima basalts, and we go down to a trickle. The other thing Paul Hammond has done in this document, and I did cut and paste this to get it in the proper order for us. So I'm going to spend a little time with this because even though the text is small for you, I can read it. And he's doing another couple of things. Paul Hammond going from orange time, Silesia time, dark blue, light blue, Ohanapakash, light green, and all the way up to today. So I'm like talking about the whole alphabet now. Here's what Paul is writing for this international crowd. I'm going to read some of this. Back here, before his dates are a little different than our dates because the precision on the age dating has improved so much in the last generation and a half. But 1989, I'm just finishing grad school, so it's not that long ago. 55 to 48 million years ago, Silesia time. Mica, remember this? Mica feldspathic sedimentary deposits on the continental plain and shelf. Then he gets into Farallon Kula and the green M&M stuff and the Straight Creek Fault. It's almost like I put this whole alphabet together knowing that what Paul wrote in 1989. I would tell you if it's true, it's not true. I kind of organically with you put much of the winter's alphabet together, letter by letter, and then I found this thing a few days ago, and it was like, wow, we were kind of on the right track with a bunch of this stuff. We were in sync with Paul Hammond's thinking more than 35 years ago, or whatever, exactly 35 years ago. Have I been married 35 years? Orange, accretion, Silesia. So he's talking Silesia, 1989. Clockwise rotation begins. Dark blue, early days of the, break-off belt and that sort of stuff. Subduction begins. Initial arc volcanism begins in Washington with, again, those mica-rich sedimentary deposits going all the way across the state. Subsidence continues. So he's on to the low Cascades idea. Paul Hammond is. Light blue. Yeah, early days of the Cascades. Rotation continues. Volcaniclastic deposition in marine forearc with, again, the Arcosic sandstones. And we do some folding, we do some extension across the southern part of the arc. I'm realizing that Paul Hammond was not only doing a bunch of igneous geology, but he was a structural guy. And he was paying attention to these anticlines and synclines, these subsiding basins and these uplifting ridges, maybe more so than a few other folks who were doing just igneous work. So I'm realizing that he's leading us to this old idea about the Yakima basalts crossing the Cascades without being overt about it. Let's keep going. I'm getting a lot out of this. Maybe you are too. Now, both Ohanapikosh and Fife's Peak time. By the way, we've picked up the rotation. I don't know if we still believe that, but he thinks the rotation, oh no, maybe he's just saying there's more years here. Okay, forget that. Increasing oblique convergence, intra-arc rifting, an eruption of pyroclastic flows and minor basalt. So he's still got subsidence. He's still got the land sinking with a trough in what is now the Cascades. Granite plutons emplaced at shallow depths, continued folding to the north, extension to the south as rotation continues. Okay, I'm not going to keep repeating this stuff, but you're hearing what I'm saying, I think. Next weekend, we'll be using many of these concepts. We're getting introduced to the concepts today. When we finally get to the basalt time, the Yakima basalt, there's a magmatic lull in much of the Cascades while we're doing these massive flood basalt eruptions over by damn near Idaho. And look what he writes. The Yakima basalt covered part of the northern arc. And I think he's talking about the Cascade Range as a whole. So the northern arc is like covering the Washington part of the Cascades. I don't think he's saying North Cascades. I think he's saying the Washington part of the entire Cascade arc. Rotation continues. Subsidence of the trough ceased. Okay, so he's got this floor dropping out. He's got the floor dropping, but by the time we do the Yakima basalts, we stop the floor dropping. And we do the uplift, his number, 9 million years ago. Arc volcanism decreased, increased the convergence. So that's the other interesting thing, and then I promise to get off of this slide. He's got the convergence rate. He's got the rate at which, the speed at which the ocean plate and North America's continental plate, he's quantifying the speed at which this head-on collision is taking place, or even if it's an oblique collision. And I don't know if I see much of this anymore, but back then, they were quantifying that convergence rate in centimeters per year, and we're not only decreasing the total volume of our magmas in the Cascade history, we're decreasing the speed of the collision. Do we still view it that way? I don't know. Third Person Thursday. Nick Zentner does not know. Keep going. There's a lot of slides. There's a lot of Gary Paul stuff yet ahead. Let's keep going. To the Tatoosh. Now, we're going south to north. We left Spirit Lake. We left the Paul Hammond overview. And now we are going to this gorgeous map from Tom from Maple Valley. Chinook Pass, Sunrise Road, Paradise Road, the snow and ice of Mount Rainier today, The Tatoosh Pluton, it's a big red pluton, much of which is not visible because the current purple cone of Mount Rainier has grown up through and sits on top of a lot more red that used to be there. Interestingly, the green Ohanapikosh is all through the Mount Rainier area. The green Ohanapikosh continues up to the Snoqualmie Batholith area, and this map maker has even extended some Ohanapikosh up towards Glacier Peak. I don't know if we agree with that, but that was the cartoon done here. Oh, another thing I wanted to point out, I'm not going to bother splitting out the White River Pluton or the Carbon River Pluton. I'm confused by that. I don't know if they all used to be called the Tatoosh and for some reason they've been given different names. I don't think I care. Saturday, I will care about the Bumping Lake Pluton, which appears to be a different body than the Tatoosh, I guess. Okay, we go into some reading from Hammond, from Dick Fisk, and others. I want to do it quickly, though. I don't want to get bogged down here. Andesitic to dacitic flows and tufts of the Ohanapikosh represent early Cascade arc. Well, not really early, right? The Ohanapikosh is not the earliest days. That's Jeff Tepper country with the Norcraft and the Goebel and those. But anyway, yeah, it's early. And we're exposing it in different places. Timberwolf Mountain to the east of Mount Rainier National Park and in Mount Rainier National Park as well. I'm just reading some text to get a sense of the detail in the Ohanapikosh, kind of review. Lapilli tufts and andesite flows are the dominant types in the Ohanapikosh and are dated, okay, we know dates better, over 3,000 meters, that's 3 kilometers, thick of Ohanapikosh present within the type area. Basal deposits of the unit are interbedded with uppermost micaceous sandstones. That was Don Swanson's point. The original top of the Ohanapikosh, nobody can find. So it's been chewed away apparently, and so there maybe was even more thickness of the Ohanapikosh once upon a time before we started depositing the Fifes Peak. So you're sick of this by now. I think maybe I am too. But we continue to use Ken Clark's sketch, which was originally of the Squawk time. We are visualizing the Ohanapikosh as being something very similar. Low elevation, no high Cascade range. No high Cascade range. But if we go to the Tatoosh Pluton, we know that stuff came up through the green. And if we go east of Mount Rainier National Park, now this is Catherine Schultz's, is that her first name? It's Schultz's master's thesis from the Timberwolf Mountain area. There's other local names, Wildcat Creek, Timberwolf Mountain facies. But again, we're just using our color scheme to keep track of our time and our concepts. And so in Timberwolf Mountain, I hope you can see the utility of our very simple, colorful framework. Grello, blue, dark blue, green, and red. More coming about the Timberwolf, but I just want to give you a sense that the Fifes Peak is red, dacitic flows, debris flows, and acidic flows, good. This is from the Schultz master's thesis, which you have, either for today or Saturday, I forget. On top of the Ohanapikosh, green, is rhyolitic volcanics and volcaniclastics of the Stevens Ridge Formation. We're going to look at a video just in a second of Stevens Ridge itself on the Paradise Road, the Stevens Ridge Road. And back in Dick Fisk time in 1963, the Stevens Ridge Formation was a separate unit. But everybody now agrees from the dating that the Stevens Ridge Formation is red. We're lumping it right into the Fifes Peak. But we're just focusing on the kinds of rocks that are present. Excuse me. And the Stevens Ridge is a lot of rhyolitic lavas, volcaniclastic. Volcaniclastics predominate. Rhyolitic pumice lapilli ash flows, composing much of this Stevens Ridge, which is the lower part of the Fifes Peak Formation. Topographic relief appears to have been considerable, as demonstrated by highly variable thickness of the formation. For the first time in a long time, somebody's saying we do have some mountains during the earliest days of the Fife Peak. Let's keep an eye on that. Let's keep an eye on that. Are we going to shave those off as the Fife's Peak time continues? The Fife's Peak is on top of the Stevens Ridge, still trying to give you a sense in text of the rock types, andesite flows, volcaniclastics. Lots of it east of Mount Rainier Park. The Fife's Peak formation is composed of a lot of these different kinds of explosive units. Let's go to Stevens Ridge, which is now viewed as red, correct? And let's take a look at some of this in Mount Rainier National Park. Full of welded tuff. Well, what do I notice? What do you notice if you've been following along with these programs? Well, it's not green, right? It's not the green, the consistent green of the Ohanapikosh. And yet again, we can see that there's all sorts of drama inside of these volcanic units. This is a welded tuff, and I think it's the scale. I'm going to have to work hard to get my mind around the scale of this Stevens Ridge welded tuff. But there's so much of it. It's so thick that parsing out or trying to visualize the scale of the explosive events back in the Miocene, I don't know the date yet, it's worth thinking about. But we are younger than the Ohanapikosh formation now. Yeah, just if I zoomed by and I didn't have the Pringle guidebook, I think I would be looking at a Pluton, like it's real light colored. But that's not the case. I mean, it kind of looks, this texture as a rookie, like I am, looks similar to the Ohanapikosh, but I don't think we're at sea level anymore. I think, in fact, I'm almost sure of it. And if we're in the Roaring Twenties with this Stevens Ridge, which I'm not sure that's true, but then what's the elevation and where are the vents for these truly impressive, colossal explosions? I mean, you got to love these tunnels. I mean, you can do what you want, but a tunnel built into Stevens Ridge. Yeah, every chunk. Pyroclastic flow. Okay, you have resources. First of all, that video clip is part of an hour-long video clip that I did driving up the Paradise Road in Mount Rainier National Park in September. It's in the video library. There's a similar one for the Sunrise Road. I'm very proud of those two videos. It's maybe too much on bedrock geology and whatever, but I thought it would be way more popular than it is. The scenery is just outstanding with those videos, I think. And that Mount Rainier scene is just such a beautiful, natural, living laboratory, especially for these units we're talking about in red time, that, man, it's perfect. It's perfect to put these resources together with a place like Mount Rainier National Park. And yes, we continue to keep thinking about this landmark work by Dick Fisk and others. These are graduate students under Aaron Waters in the late 1950s and early 1960s. This is the copy from Don Ring, longtime beloved teacher who passed away a few years ago, but Don was good to me when I first got to Central. So, you've got this in digital form, but I just want to let you know that, if you can get your hand on these originals, then these old maps are sitting there in the back with cross-section and everything else. You've got a digital version of this, but there's something about, I don't know, are you my age or older? There's something about finding these little presents in the back that are particularly fun. We're going to go up to Glacier Peak in a bit. Same idea. These beautiful old maps. I don't know why it's so pleasing to me, but it is. Maybe you can relate. Maybe going back to my childhood days where there's like pop-up books or something like that. We're eventually going to get to this one as well. Okay, but we're in Mount Rainier National Park at the moment. Let's keep going with the slides. I'm trying on purpose to keep things varied for you. If your interest flags, we go back to some text. If you get bored, then we go back to going in the field and doing some video stuff. Fives Peak, yeah. Small shield volcanoes, stratovolcanoes, Tieton Volcano, Timberwolf Mountain Shield Volcano. That's all coming on Saturday with the episode called Hammond Land. More on the Fives Peak. Yes, they're referring Fisk and others, 1963. Andesite lava flows, basalt lava flows, chiefly lava flows, but there's lahars, debris avalanches, tuff deposits, rhyolite interstratified with lava flows, rhyolitic tuff of Burnt Mountain, andesite of Cabin Creek, andesite of Tieton Volcano, apron deposits, tuffs deposits of cones, dikes of radial swarms, rhyodacite and rhyolite tuff of Cache Prairie. This is all on Saturday, but it's all part of the Fives Peak. It's all part of the Fives Peak. It's all part. I think the chalkboard's going to look exactly like this on Saturday as well. And we'll say we're done with the Plutons. Now we're just doing nothing but going east of the Tatoosh and looking into this area that Paul Hammond spent more than 60 consecutive summers, 60 consecutive summers visiting the Fives Peak. Okay, I've had enough. So does Fives Peak time look like this? I guess we are starting to get hints of reports that there were some rugged places here and there, and that will be important for us to think about next weekend, but let's not obsess about it now. Yeah, and even Yakima basalt time. You've got it now. You know that I know the next few letters in the alphabet for sure, and that's where we're going. Okay, we're not leaving red, though. We're transitioning, I think, from the Fives Peak layers into the Plutons themselves. Tatoosh, Snoqualmie, and Cloudy Pass rounds out our time together. Yeah, so Tatoosh is coming up through the Ohanapikosh. White Pass is nearby. Chinook and Cayuse Passes right in here. And in the Fisk maps, they use this beautiful peach color, which is a red for us. This is the Tatoosh, and it's cutting abruptly up across mostly the Ohanapikosh, but in places it's even cutting across Fives Peak. Let's go look at the Tatoosh Pluton again with a couple of those Mount Rainier videos. Tatoosh Pluton. So, together, let's lay eyes for the first time with an outcrop of the Tatoosh Pluton. And which of those dates is appropriate right here? Is this the Tatoosh that's 25 million, 24 million, 14 million? I don't know. Aww. For us rookies, the Tatoosh Pluton is a granite riddled with mafic enclaves. No big deal. Another one. Tatoosh Pluton. Let's get serious. No more screwing around. Beautiful outcrop. All of it. And coarse-grained. Quartz monzonite or something else. Granitic. Hey! It's nice. Let's go over and take a quick look. Pretty simple granite to my eye. Plenty of quartz, some biotite. That's as much as you're going to get out of me. Mm-hmm. Tatouche Pluton looking south. Tatouche Pluton in Peach. I'm at Rick Secker Point. Okay, you get it. It's hard to beat the scenery. So it's one thing to have interesting geology to study. But we're not in a bunch of gravel pits. We're not huddled at some exit ramp on some interstate. We're not in some flat cornfield. We're in places like that for many of these topics and many of these bedrock units. You can see why Paul Hammond and so many others kept coming back. It's a natural playground that also has fascinating geology. Tough to beat that combo. Tough to beat that combo. All right, it's been a while since we've looked at this from the Mullen paper. We know the flare-up is happening starting, and the Chilliwack is really going during Ohenepekash times. But now we're south of the Chilliwack, and this is the Tatoosh and the Snoqualmie really cranking out the magmas. So let's go and spend more time leaving the Tatoosh now, I think, and going up to the Snoqualmie and seeing what kind of different stories or similar stories we have between the Tatoosh in Mount Rainier National Park and Snoqualmie Pass and Snoqualmie batholith, which you remember, Snoqualmie's lonely. Snoqualmie's a big red pluton that does not have a crown jewel sitting on or near it. All the rest of the big red plutons from the last episode have a modern cone associated with it. Snoqualmie batholith. Tom, thank you. Tom has given us a beautiful map, Snoqualmie Pass, Interstate 90. So many of us know this drive so well. North Bend, up to Snoqualmie Pass. Here's US 2 by Index and Skykomish. So it's a big batholith, and I guess we'll use the term batholith because Tom picked it, but also because maybe we'll use, I don't know, for this series, maybe we won't get hung up on pluton versus batholith too much. But if there's distinctly different ages within a pluton, maybe that's when we use a kind of a composite term of batholith. So I think this is the younger stuff down here versus the older stuff. And Mount Daniels, where we're about to head in a bit, is over here. Oh, from the archives, 10 years ago. Often accompanied with uplifts. You can have a mountain range composed of this rock that formed down below in a magma chamber. That's the scene in many places where the cones used to stand. I-90 travelers drive right through one of those old magma chambers, the Snoqualmie batholith. Much of the bedrock west of the summit is granite that was once molten, supplying magmas to volcanoes 25 to 17 million years ago. A huge batch of magma chamber rock? That's a batholith. The beautiful granite has coarse mineral grains of feldspar, mica, hornblende, and quartz. The minerals are big due to the slow cooling of the magma deep underground. And there are more exposed granite batholiths north of the Snoqualmie Pass area all the way to Canada. Huge magma chambers compared to the plumbing systems beneath our majestic cones today. East of the summit, I made that with Tom Foster 10 years ago. We didn't know anything about those batholiths, and I know quite a bit more thanks to our work here this winter. If I go to the document camera quickly, I couldn't find a digital version of this paper. I don't know how important it is, but this is back in the early 60s. This is the professor, Aaron Waters, who was supervising at the time, Don Swanson, Hans Schmeinke, Dick Fisk, couple of others. I can't remember their names at the moment. And Waters is talking about this very confusing labeling idea that goes back to Warren and even earlier than that. So I thought maybe I was going to use this, but I don't think I am, because there's just so much confusion about what to name what. But Aaron Waters was interested in these plutons that we're talking about, both Snoqualmie and Tatoosh and some of these other units in between. My slides tell me to read a little bit from the Erickson. I forget if you have this one. Maybe I couldn't find a digital version of this either. Eric Erickson from Juanita College in Huntingdon, Pennsylvania, was out here apparently looking at the petrology of the composite Snoqualmie batholith. And let me just read a couple quick things here. Epizonal Snoqualmie batholith, at least 8 intrusive phases emplaced in a mafic to silicic sequence. It's a magma suite. So this has all the telltale signs of being another one of these rainbows. So you remember we had Chilliwack Rainbow with more than 50 separate batches of magma over the course of 35 million years. Again, I've given up on trying to come up with our best dates on plutons like the Snoqualmie, in part because I just don't think that work has been done. I don't think there's a Mullen equivalent who has tackled the Snoqualmie or tackled the Spirit Lake. And we know the people who are tackling the Spirit Lake Pluton. And for all I know, they will continue their work and go up to Snoqualmie batholith next. You heard Mike talk that he was thinking seriously about working on the Snoqualmie batholith with this current proposal. We're going to hear from Mike again because there's a payoff here in just a bit. Keep it going, boy. Okay, ready for some Gary Paul photos, rainbow labels, some that you've seen before and some that are receiving world premiere treatment? You are? Interested? So am I. We've seen this one. Looking south to Mount Rainier, we know plenty more now about the Ohanapikosh, and we're starting to wrap our mind around a younger batch of stuff known as the Fifes Peak. Looking north from the same spot, 2 different batches of Snoqualmie batholith, 2 different ages, 2 different colors, Ohanapikosh in between, Grello, and purple for the very young Glacier Peak volcano. Gary's skiing today, by the way, on top of Baker. He told me he wasn't going to be with us live. You've seen these as well, but I'm just grabbing them because many of them have Fifes Peak. Now that we know what the Fifes Peak volcanics are, graveyard of all these ghost volcanoes that were once active and erupting all these different kinds of silica contents, from mafic magmas all the way up to silicic stuff, from shield volcanoes all the way up to supervolcanic explosions, from lava flows to ash falls to ash flows to mud flows. They're all in this pile, and they're not just down here in the South Cascades. If you look, you can find them in North Cascades as well. This is Monte Cristo. We're up close to Glacier Peak volcano, and there's a bunch of that cover which is hanging on and hasn't been stripped away completely. Monte Cristo range. I didn't quite get the significance of this until recently. Lindsay Malone from Seattle, helping us get a few concepts involving the Snoqualmie batholith and a couple of well-known peaks in the backcountry, north of Snoqualmie Pass-ish. Thank you, Lindsay. Another one from Lindsay. Oh, my goodness. We're up on Mount Hinman, Snoqualmie batholith. That's our topic currently, right? In the red time, in the 20s. That's all I care about. But we've got every color of the rainbow here. Purple for Rainier. Green. Dark green even. Dark blue. Orange for Swak time. More of the same Snoqualmie batholith. Way the hell over there. Swak on the Bear's Breast. Beautiful. Thank you, Lindsay. Gorgeous. New photos that are old photos of Gary Paul. Love this shot. Up in the Snoqualmie Bath somewhere, probably decades ago. Mayfic Enclave in the Snoqualmie Batholith. Jeff Tepper did not lie. Gary sent this a couple of weeks ago. I've been saving it. I found this photo, Nick, of Kelly Butte, an andesite plug that pops up through the Ohanapakash. It might be a feeder to the Fifes Peak flows. Meant to tell you that Kelly Peak is about 25 miles west of Cle Elum. It's on the west side of the crest. So this concept of green being there first, Ohanapakash, and then all these invasions from below of red coming up through the green. Red coming up through the green. Red coming up through the green. Can you see it now, cartoonishly? Red coming up through the green. Stupid. Okay? To me, that helps. I'm not fighting through a bunch of names and numbers and stats and stuff. I've got simple colors, and I know that relationship, and I can see that over and over again now as I'm going out. And if I'm feeling bold right now, and you let me say it out loud, here's one thing I can say. Maybe you watch this whole winter series, and you're like, damn it, we're going to go to the Cascades, and we're going to spend 2 days, 2 weeks, visiting a bunch of these places. And maybe you have some sort of app or you have some sort of map with you and you find yourself on this hike or some drive or some fire lookout or something, and maybe you and your family or whomever you're with, or maybe you're just by yourself, maybe you read about the name and the age of this unit, this formation name that means nothing to you, maybe even the kind of rock, like some sort of dacitic, rhyodacite, whatever. You're like, okay, I guess that's what it is, everybody. Maybe this winter, with our very elegant but simple, colorful framework, maybe this can help. And you go, I don't think I totally get this. And then the person you're with goes, oh, isn't that red and this is green? And you're like, oh, shit, yeah, okay, now I know where I am. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe this framework with the colors is just easy enough to remember because we keep repeating it, right? Easy enough to remember that it can help you appreciate a place more because just using the colors, you know how to get into the framework of the whole thing. Moving on. Sorry. Now we're getting into country where I can't remember if you've seen the photos or not, but even if you have to agree these are stunning photographs. Fifes Peak, Keys Peak with breccia. I guess I don't even know where we are. Are we up by Mount Daniel now, maybe? Glacier Peak, I guess we're looking north. Must be. There's Monte Cristo. You've seen this one. Same thing, Keys Peak. So there are plenty of scraps of Fifes Peak north of Snoqualmie. That's my point. And if we keep going north and we get to the Grotto Batholith, or maybe, Tom, maybe we would just call this the Grotto Pluton because I don't know. I think it sounds like everybody agrees that the Grotto is really not a separate Pluton. It's the same as the Snoqualmie. It's just a separate offshoot of the Snoqualmie. The Snoqualmie Pluton or the Snoqualmie Composite Batholith or the Rainbow Snoqualmie is south here. And then we're crossing US 2. Stevens Pass is over in this direction. We're heading up towards Glacier Peak Volcano, and we still have a part of a big red Pluton that most people agree is part of the Snoqualmie story. But if we go to the other side, if we go to the northeast of Glacier Peak Volcano, now I know you haven't seen these, and I know you haven't seen this, which is a new Tom from Maple Valley map showing Glacier Peak Volcano and the Cloudy Pass Pluton. And here's Lake Chelan, for goodness sake. And the green schist of White Chuck Mountain. We did a Nick on the Rocks there a couple of years ago. Let's look at some brand new Gary Paul photos from the Cloudy Pass. After we look at this Roland Tabor old school map of the Cloudy Pass. And yes, this whole publication, which I've never really used much, but I've always seen around the department, there's a few copies of this. This is looking at the Cloudy Pass Pluton and the Glacier Peak volcano and other bedrock geology by Roland Tabor back in the late 60s, 1969. Okay, Gary, I know that I was showing this one back in letter A and letter B when we were comparing and contrasting between the North Cascades and the South Cascades, but suddenly this makes more sense to me. It's not just basement. There's a Pluton in the 20s, the Cloudy Pass batholith. There's a Pluton in the 20s, the Cloudy Pass batholith. Gary likes the number 22. It's probably the best number we have. I'm not as interested in those numbers anymore, since my attention will be focused elsewhere in the next few letters. Yeah, I always want to make sure to give you the full shot to enjoy the clouds and how Gary framed the photograph looking southeast from Miners Ridge. And then I always try to zoom in just a little bit so we can see some of the beautiful detail that Gary has to share with us. And you're like, how much did you pay this guy to label these photos and give them to you so that you could use them in your teaching? I'm not paying anybody. You're not paying me. I'm not paying anybody else. It's a community. We're all exchanging ideas and we're all exchanging our expertise. What's my expertise? Trying to put some stories together and sharing it. What's Gary's expertise? That. Come on, man. Or that. Good God. Do I know where Greenwood Mountain is? No. Am I looking west? Apparently. Cloudy Pass down in the hole. Glacier Peak purple andesites. White Chuck, green schists of the Shuckson Metamorphic Suite. Copper exploration on Plummer Mountain. Lyman Lake down in the hole. Wow. Correct, Eric. A free exchange of ideas and knowledge. Isn't that what the internet should be? Stop. Get off of it. Get off of it. Gary's going through his old slides as well as his new photos that he's taken. His favorite Pluton of all time, the Marble Mount Dumbbell Plutons, which are more than 200 million years old. That's right. More than 200 million years old, are next to a 22 million year old Pluton. Eroded crystalline core. Thank you, Gary Paul. There's a reason they call it Cloudy Pass. Never been. Never been. Not sure I will ever get to some of these places. Oh, Gary. So we would take our young boys, teaching them how to hike and do backcountry camping with a bunch of Liz's friends and her mom's group, and we will go up to Spider Meadows. And I assume that's heading towards Spider Gap. I'm not sure. I'm a little turned around right here. South from Cloudy Peak. Oh, okay. I guess we were up in that country. Those that are watching live right now, can you hike from the other side up the Chihuahua? Is that how you approach this? Is Spider Meadows just on the backside of that gap? If so, then I've actually been there with a bunch of very young boys who were super rookie-like in the backcountry. But it was fun to teach them some basics. A lot of Green Bay Packer gear, I remember, back in the late 90s. Lyman Lake, Cloudy Pass, crystalline core. That's a striking photograph. A striking photograph. Lindsay, Spider Meadows is just on the other side of Spider Gap. Cool. Okay, nice. I had no idea I was in this country with those kids. Thank you, Gary. There's more. Wait, did we already look at this? He loves that 222 million-year-old Pluton. I know that. God. This is back to the exotic terrain days and realizing the crystalline core and the dramatic uplift. I know it's in the Cascades, but that's different. Those are structures. Those strike slip. Okay, that's an interesting question. I've got this uplift thing on the brain, obviously. I'm still trying to think about next weekend. But people that have been Zoom interviewing with, keep saying there aren't any obvious faults. There aren't any obvious structures where we're lifting the Cascades. And I guess that's true, but yet in the North Cascades, we have that geologic elevator going up, and those are happening on faults, I think. They're fault-bounded uplifts. But they're not in the South Cascades of Washington? I need to think about that. I mean, look at that. Oh, the hits keep coming here. Come on. I forgot I had this many. Gary, you are out of control. And this really only works probably for those of you that were with our community 2, 3, 4 winters ago when we were learning all the details of the Pequot schist, and this is Grello, and this is in the blender, and it's got Tethyan fossils from the other side of the Pacific and so on. There's the Swakane biotite gneiss. Wow. Wow. Wowzer. Pat Miller, thank you. How far we have all come together. Thank you, Pat. Beautifully said. We've seen this one, but it's one of my favorites. Cloudy Pass Batholith, that's featured here today. Okay, I think we have enough. I don't know if we're, yeah. So, a little plug. Gary's skiing today. He emailed me this morning before he left for the slopes. And Gary said, I can't open my PowerPoint. And I don't know what's going on with my computer, but I've got a show that I'm about to do. So I don't know how I'm going to solve my computer problem, but I got to figure it out before next Wednesday. So if you'd like to meet Gary, and if you'd like to go to a slideshow specifically put together for you and a group of other people, and if you're in the Bellingham area, next Wednesday, February 12th, show up at the Backcountry Essentials Outdoor Store on State Street, 7:30, and I'm sure that you will enjoy the vocal stylings and the beautiful photographs by Gary Paul. Up to the Chilliwack briefly, to remind ourselves that it's a Chilliwack rainbow, and I thought maybe we would do a lot more there. I'm not sure we will. You can see I'm just cutting things left and right now that I've got onto this new angle. And for all I know, if I see the live chat later on or I see comments down below or I get emails, people will go, you're making a mistake. You were all set to get into Mount Ram caldera and all these other things in the high Cascades, and I can't believe you're backing away from that and chasing this weird idea about Yakima basalts crossing the Cascades. Maybe it will be a mistake. And maybe I'll change my mind. But for 2 letters next weekend, I think I want to chase that question. So maybe we won't visit the Mount Ram caldera specifically. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think I do, and that also came up in that Gary Paul recorded visit. I think I do want to make, okay, here's a question for somebody like you. Are you totally into what we're doing? Thank you if you are. I don't think you need to have a lot of artistic skill necessarily. It could be just a hand-drawn map. But I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to do what I wanted to do, which was to make an inventory of all of the mapped calderas in Washington state. Is somebody interested, or a few of you interested, in emailing me your inventory? Now, maybe that's just a little spreadsheet or something, and you have kind of poured through the Washington Geological Survey resources or something else. But I think I would like to either have that list that you send me. You're like, I'm not going to send you anything. Isn't it your job to do all this? It is my job, but it's a community, and I don't know if I'm going to have enough time or interest to spend a lot of time on that caldera stuff. I think it would be fun to get an inventory of all of the mapped calderas, whether they're known or just inferred, but somewhere, if you can find all that information, put it together in an email, or maybe I'll take 4 different viewer emails and put them together. And then if you're kind of semi-visual, can you make a little map with Sharpies or whatever? Like, it would be fun, I think, to see a map of Washington geology where we have, I don't know, 25 calderas? And now that I'm into it, asking for help, I guess the calderas would be color-coded. How many green calderas have been inferred? How many red ones? I think we're going to have a lot of red ones on Saturday. I know a bunch of red ones on Saturday, but I'm thinking rainbow calderas. Can we make a map of rainbow calderas? Calderas by color. I assume all in the Cascades, but maybe for some reason there's a caldera out in Spokane or something. I don't know. Just a thought. And you're like, that sounds like a lot of pressure. I don't think I can handle it. That's fine. Sit that one out. You don't have to do anything. You're here. That's enough. It's here. It's okay. Got a few more slides, and then we're going to turn it over to some live Q&A today. I think. Oh, Gary. I've lost track. Have you seen this one yet or not? Chilliwack Rainbow, 2 different batches of magma in the Chilliwack batholith. Oh, no, there's a whole nother segment of this. Sorry, we're not wrapping up. I got a whole nother segment that I want to do. Okay, keep it going. 3 different segments of the Chilliwack Rainbow. We have seen that. Thank you, Gary. What do the lulls tell us? I thought that was going to be a major narrative. I'm not sure we're going to spend a lot of time with it, but I'm reminding you from the Mullen paper that there was a 13 million year period of essential continuous magma activity in the Chilliwack, and then between 22 and 11 million years ago, the whole thing shuts down, and it's a lull. It's a quiet time. Why? And that lull up in the Chilliwack from 22 to 11 does not appear to be arc scale. It's not the case for all the Cascades. There's other places where that's all firing up. There's a very precise 18 million year date for the Conway phase of the Mount Barr batholith, which is just adjacent to the northern margin of the Chilliwack. Doctors Point Pluton, Rogers Creek Pluton, you can see how this goes crazy here. And I think I'm including this because in the Mullen paper, they have 4 phases of the Tatoosh in Rainier area, recently dated between 19.2 and 17.5. So I think that's part of the reason I extended the red time up until 16 million years ago. However, with very few volcanic or plutonic rocks falling in the 15 to 5 million year age range, the area south of the Chilliwack appears to have a lull down there at the same time that the Chilliwack fires up. So this weird daisy chaining up and down the spine of the Cascades lulls, and then you fire up, and then you shut down again. There must be a story there. We're probably a long way from figuring that out. I remind you Jim Mattinson back in 1977, who devised the whole way to work with zircons in labs and trying to get high precision dates. He got us a major step forward from the days of Fisk in the 1960s. But we certainly have a new batch of geologists doing similar work to refine these dates since 1977. That's a long time ago now. We finished today by steering towards a specific area in the Cascades that will transition us to some new thoughts for the next couple of episodes. And this is in the context of Gary Paul himself on Sunday morning pitching new ideas for Nick on the Rocks episodes. And number one on his list, Red Times and Mount Daniel. Gary. Okay.
I'd say, but in keeping with the Cascade A to Z,
Good.
a couple that came to my mind pretty much right away were Cathedral Rock up at the head of the Cle River, which is some kind of volcanic plug adjacent to Mount Daniel.
Okay.
Snoqualmie batholith.
Let me hold you up right there. So viewers, we're thinking about episodes that need two hallmarks for each episode. It needs to be scenic. There needs to be enough to work with visually for Brady and his drone and his cameras and everything else. So we have to have a beautiful area, and Gary knows that. And then we also need some kind of geologic morsel that might be surprising to people. I think I just realized that right now, Gary. Instead of just like, here's a little piece of geological information, I think the best episodes are the ones where people go, yeah, I kind of knew about that place, but I thought it was this, and you're saying it's that? Huh.
Yeah.
That's kind of odd. So is there an angle there? Are we up in the Snoqualmie Pass area, essentially, for this Cathedral Rock?
Yeah.
More or less?
River.
Okay.
So, and we have the interesting thing that I really didn't realize until fairly recently that Mount Daniel and its neighbor Mount Hinman they're completely different, but they might be more similar than we think because they're maybe about the same age. One's intrusive, one's extrusive.
Huh.
And we have a possible caldera right in the area of Cathedral Rock also.
Oh my God, really? Okay. Are we red? Are we red with this?
We're definitely red. Very red.
Okay. Well, maybe I should So let's look into that just a little bit more as we finish. There's a callback. If you're an excellent student with this winter series, you're remembering a prior conversation with this series a few letters back, where we're calling back to that right now. Can you remember who I was talking to? Who mentioned Mount Daniel? So I'm starting to think more carefully about Snoqualmie Pass, Mount Daniel, which I knew nothing about, Mount Stewart, I know plenty about it, but Mount Daniel is kind of equidistant between two well-known landmarks, for me at least, and the Cle River that Gary was just talking about. You can drive up much of the Cle River and get into this country. And Mount Daniel is this little offshoot or little nose of this much bigger Snoqualmie batholith. So this is my county, man. This is Kittitas County where I live. And yet I've never been up to Mount Daniel and Cathedral Rock. And Gary was talking about this. Now here we go. Here we go. More backcountry Gary photographs. Looking to the north from the summit of Mount Daniel. We're in the 20s. Here's the batholith, and here's andesite lava. So here's the plutonic and the volcanic rock in the same picture at Pea Soup Lake. Stunning photograph. Fire smoke, says Gary. But the Stewart Range and the whole Baja, BC thing is the backdrop for this story. But this is the idea here. And again, give you the wide shot and then you bring in. Tom, you're right. Mike Eddy's the guy that was talking about this. We're going to finish with Mike's comment. But the andesite that we probably will feature in one of the Nick on the Rocks episodes is going to be tied to the Snoqualmie batholith somehow. And there's not just andesite, but rhyolite up there as well. So medium to high silica lavas. Another shot from Gary. Now we can see Mount Stewart, which we can see also from this campus right now. But the Stewart batholith, the Ingalls ophiolite, this is old school stuff that we've been talking about for years, but this is new for me. The Daniel Glacier, the Mount Daniel andesite, and here we go. The centerpiece, according to Gary, of the new Nick on the Rocks episode filmed sometime this summer, Cathedral Rock. Both of these tied somehow to the Snoqualmie batholith. Yet another. So there's a caldera up there. If you're willing to take the bait and help us all out with some sort of caldera inventory, I guess you need to include at least an idea of a caldera up here with the Snoqualmie batholith somehow. The Citadel? What is this? Turkey or Greece or Iraq or something? No, it's your town. Bijou's right like over here. Wake up. Talking to myself. You got knees that work. How come you haven't been up to Circle Lake? Get off your ass and get up there. Red shirt. Wow. So Gary wants to film up there. I'm all for it. We'll try to figure out how to day hike up there, I guess, and bring all the equipment and the drone. Oh, yeah, I just keep pushing in because I'm just so fascinated. So in that quick clip, I should have kept my mouth shut and let Gary talk a little bit more. I think he was starting to say that these two andesites appear to be different from each other, and yet maybe they've been dated or maybe they haven't been dated well enough. But yeah, that's how we'll finish. We go to Mr. Precision himself, Mike Eddy, and this is the callback to earlier in the episode. Do you remember this, viewers? Have you been watching this series in order? We did a Teanaway bimodal episode a month ago. And with Mike, who's colorblind, he has very bright colors on his map. Pink for Snoqualmie batholith. But he's got two blotches of pink way the hell down here. Why? That one makes a little more sense. That one makes a little more sense. It's closer to the Snoqualmie batholith. But why do we have these two pink things here? In the Teanaway, it's rhyolite. It's rhyolite that was first mapped by George Otis Smith more than 100 years ago. And that was the biggest learning moment for me in the first half of the alphabet, to realize, with you and everybody, that there's 49 million year old Teanaway basalt and Teanaway rhyolite, but there's also Teanaway rhyolite in these little domes, including red top, that are half as old. They're red times, not orange times or dark blue times. So Mike was on this, and we're going to finish with a couple of clips. I'm out with Andrew Sadowski. We're looking at some of this
there's your blotching.
Beautiful pink rhyolite in the
Much more
Teanaway.
pink than we had.
Yeah, I think some.
From Smith, 1900. The thick accumulations of rhyolite near the North Fork of the Teanaway River, just north of Ellensburg, were probably deposited near their eruptive vents, perhaps in part as extrusive domes. Their thickness and lateral discontinuity, along with the viscous nature of the rhyolites in general, support this hypothesis. So I went and chased down, a few summers ago, one of those red rhyolites. Red meaning in the 20s. And it wasn't the most handsome looking rock.
So we're pretty bleached out. Let's try something else. Pretty fine grained, I think.
But at the time, I was thoroughly confused why we had rhyolite that was so young. And then I talked to Mike Eddy last month. Sorry. I mean, all I've done so far is like mentally wander to the Snoqualmie batholith and say that thing was active in the 20s. I mean, similar to your Spirit Lake Pluton active in the 20s. So like, I don't know, would we have some silicic plugs shooting off of the Snoqualmie bath? Am I saying that right? Is it? Yeah, it's the Snoqualmie batholith. I mean, it's tantalizing to come up with a tectonic explanation or even to correlate those Miocene rhyolites in the Teanaway Valley with something nearby. And I don't know, maybe if you get cooking with the Spirit Lake Pluton project and there's some rhyolite plugs off to the east, that would be an interesting corollary to what's going on at Snoqualmie Pass, and then this like Mount Daniels or something. I don't know what I'm talking about right now, but I feels like that would
Mount
go ahead.
Mount Daniels is pretty close by, and it was definitely erupting around this time. So when we were planning this proposal for Spirit Lake, we were torn between doing the Mount Daniels area and Spirit Lake. And ultimately, I decided that it would be easier to pitch if we went with Spirit Lake. So we looked, Isla and I and Bobsy looked pretty hard at Mount Daniels, which looks like just a beautiful place to go do some geologic research. But
there's less trees there than down in Mount Spirit Lake, as you found out last summer.
Yes, there are definitely less trees, but a big climb to get there.
That's true. Let's not. So it's icing on the cake to have somebody as talented as Mike Eddy with all these strengths to say basically, look, your area, just a few miles from your university, is really interesting. And there's major things that could be done with Mount Daniel, Cathedral Rock, the Snoqualmie Batholith, the Teanaway Formation, and the Natchez Formation. If we throw that in, the Natchez has just been a garbage can unit that I've avoided. Have you noticed? I haven't done much with the Natchez. As soon as Mike Eddy a while back said, I don't know what to do with the Natchez. It's confusing to me. I don't know why it's part of the breakoff belt and other things. So there's a lot going on and a lot of interesting questions that remain tied to the Snoqualmie batholith, which I guess I would have just assumed was one of the first things people figured out long ago. It's been avoided for some reason, it seems, over the years. I think that's it. Yeah, Snoqualmie batholith, major puzzles remain with this beautiful scenery. Mike Eddy, thank you. And Hammondland will come next time. You're still with us, and more than 730 live viewers are still with us on a Thursday afternoon. It's time for some live Q&A before we quit here today. Would you mind? Uppercase, caps lock. Please type in a few questions, and I'll try to be rapid fire about answering a few the best I can. Papagino, couldn't the slab window cause the pre-Cascades to sink? And when the M&M moved and transformed inflow underfilled, the pre-Cascades rose. Interesting. Is the slab window and the green M&M migration somehow tied to subsidence or uplift in the history of the Cascades? It's a good thought. Let me think more about that. I don't have an answer for you. Mr. Morlock, why does the Chilliwack get a rainbow, but the Ohanapakash and Tatoosh and the Fife's Peak are separately named bodies? That is a question for me, I guess. It's not, I don't think, my decision is the Ohanapakash goes from here to here, and that's, in my color scheme, one color. Same for the Fife's Peak. So I've chosen the beginning and the end of those units to have one color so we can keep those units straight. I think I'm answering your question. The Chilliwack has such a crazy range of ages that regardless of how I defined the colors, I was going to have to use multiple colors. And that's why I almost junked the whole color thing, but everybody, cooler heads prevailed in the live crowd. I hope that answers your question. Sorry if it didn't. Sky Cooley, thank you for being with us, Sky. How quickly do Cascade calderas erode? How old is the oldest intact caldera in the Cascades? Circular edifice. You always have interesting questions, Sky. That might come out with our caldera inventory. Is it even possible to have a green caldera? In other words, a caldera that's 30 million years old? If you have evidence for a caldera, what is that exactly? You certainly don't have a topographic rim like you do the Yellowstone caldera today or the Kilauea caldera today. So what is your criteria? Why are you inferring a caldera? I'm talking to just a general field geologist like Paul Hammond. That's something we will think about on Saturday. Paul Hammond had calderas all over the place. What is he using? What deposits are he using to convince himself and others that a circular feature, a caldera, is needed on the map? And will you ever have a solid line for a caldera on a geologic map unless it's younger than 1 million years? I answered your questions with more questions. See? That's a veteran move. Double A Day. Do you know anything about Elk Mountain of Cowlitz County, west of Mount St. Helens? It has a sheer face looking southwest. I do not, but thank you for the tip. Scrolling back. AF Winter, what are the Fife's Peak equivalents south of the Columbia River? In the Columbia Gorge on both sides of the river, I assume it's all Eagle Creek. But now you're asking, is there an Eagle Creek equivalent in Oregon? I don't know much about Oregon geology. I assume we don't have much dissection of the Cascades in Oregon to get deep enough to find the red or the green times. But maybe we'd have to go out with Jason McClowry in Eastern Oregon to find some equivalents. So is that Clarno? Is that John Day? Is that Deschutes? I'm just randomly trying to remember. The Dalles Formation? There's a lot of names. I don't know which go with which colors, which is why I like the color scheme so much. Jim, before high topography can be maintained, does a large volume of these silicic batholiths need to be present before mantle isostasy can be maintained? Wow. Mantle isostasy. Are you saying if you have big red plutons with large volumes, they're heavy? And they're like depressing the crust, and the mantle is flowing away from a place that has big red plutons? If you are, that's interesting thought. I doubt by the end of the alphabet we'll be able to specifically comment on why there's sinking in the Cascades when we have it and why we have uplift in the Cascades when we have it. I think our goals will just be to document when. What's the chronology of sinking and lifting? I think those are my humble goals. You guys are going a few steps beyond that, which is great, but I don't even think most people are thinking about subsidence and uplift cycles in the last 46 million years in the Cascades. That's why it got Gary Paul's attention. Thank you. Josh, is the evidence of a paleo-low Cascades taken from across the range, or is it possible that we could have different portions uplifting at different times? Certainly, Josh, that if you go along the crest of the Cascades from BC down to Northern California, there are segments. And of course, I'm making it too simple by talking about the entire Cascades as going up and going down. And because of that knowledge of so much independent activity of segment by segment within the Cascades, I'm purposely just focusing on the South Cascades of Washington, which has been the focus point the entire winter, if I might add. South of Snoqualmie Pass, north of the Columbia River Gorge. But I'll take the spirit of your question. Even within the South Cascades of Washington, does everything have to be in sync up and down? Almost certainly not, because as we learned with Lydia Steisch in the video library, there's the Yakima fold and thrust belt with ups and downs that are projecting through the Cascades. A few more. Ron, how do we reconcile the low relief of the Cascades with all this volcanism? Were there just a few isolated stratovolcanoes and the rest of all these calderas, lavas, and domes? We'll try on Saturday, Ron, to visualize a low plain, but with isolated islands of stratovolcanoes and an occasional explosion of a more silicic volcanic center, which is maybe more reminiscent of the Ohanapakash time. But even Big Island of Hawaii-like shield volcanoes growing for a time. I just think the main message is Fife's peak time is low consistently, and we never have a major mountain range like we have today that then needs to be totally shaved down to nothing again before the Yakima basalt time. I think that's the main premise that I have for much of my thinking currently, but maybe by a week from today, I'll have a totally different stance. Down to live for 3 more. Looking for uppercase. Jim, is the Snoqualmie batholith associated with a named extinct volcano or lava flow? Jim, I guess what we did late there, if we go to the volcanics of Cathedral Rock or Mount Daniel, those are examples of lavas that are tied to the Snoqualmie batholith generally, but I don't think we have the Mike Eddy-like precision, the Isla Pamuchu precision to tie that flow with that portion of the batholith. Sai, given all the CRB on the Oregon coast, might it have crossed the Cascades south of the Columbia? We'll get there, yes. I did an Oregon Public Broadcasting episode on the Ginkgo flow, and that's definitely the story down there. Joel Gombiner with us today. Hello, Joel. Washington Geological Survey making his triumphant return to the live stream. Could erosion rates of the Cascades be higher in the Miocene and earlier due to a warmer, wetter climate? Erosion rates as climate changes. I don't even know what the logic is there. Are the warmer, wetter times more erosive or less? Like I think of arid environments that have lots of erosion. Boy, that's an interesting question, Joel. And okay, maybe that's something to do. Maybe before the end of the alphabet, we keep track of all these things that are changing over the 46 million year history. That's worth thinking about. Because today, what did Paul Hammond have? A convergence rate, this is from memory, a convergence rate slowing over the last 46 million years. What did Jeff Tepper have? I can't remember those isotopes, but he had some sort of, I had it for a second. It wasn't boron. It was something that was increasing. Was it the niobium or the tantalum that was increasing over the course of the volcanic arc? Can we then plot sea level change over the last 46 million years? Can we talk about global climate over the last 46 million years? Can we think of all these trends? I'm doing this with my hands because I'm just imagining a little geologic time stick where 46 is at the bottom and 0 is at today, and we're looking at all these things that have this linear pattern of high to low or hot to cold or fast to slow. And would doing that pay off in some way? To go, oh, of course, that's why the uplift started. I don't know. A toast to you. Here's to you for joining us today for episode T, entitled The Roaring Twenties. And if you are fond of the Roaring Twenties, we have one more episode coming on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Episode U, entitled Hammond Land. That was a silent toast, apparently. Here's to the health of you and the health of everyone in your community, near and far, your family members, people that you're close to, people that you have lost connection with, but you're still hoping that they are doing well. A toast to everybody's health. And maybe that's appropriate. This is a tough time of the year. This is, I'm talking personally now. It's gloomy. It's cold. There's not a lot of sun. There's many, many layers. Skin's pretty light, pale. Hair's dark. It's almost unrecognizable. This February version of you is often unrecognizable compared to the way that you appear 4 months from now. Maybe I'm just talking about people with my complexion, but it's a tough time of the year, just generally, I would say, health-wise. And I think fondly of some of my most beloved relatives, and many of them literally died in February, in January. And it's just getting through the winter. So maybe that sounds a little dramatic and a little extreme, but if you're feeling the winter blues wherever you are, especially in the northern hemisphere with high latitudes, I'm with you, but we're getting closer and closer to spring. And as I get older and older, springtime just gets more and more sweet each time it comes around. And places like the high Cascades in summer are waiting for us as well. Thanks, everybody. I love you. Thank you for joining us for this episode. And I'll see you all less than 48 hours from now on February 8th. That's a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you. I love you, and goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Goodbye.